Clark.
My debut 1990 September, Bristol City away. To get that opportunity, what thousands of Geordies only dream of.
Lee Clark 1-0.
Williams.
My first goal for Sunderland away at Leicester was a left foot volley. I didn't realise my left foot was for kicking the ball with it as well. I thought it was just for standing it.
Williams! Darren Williams for Sunderland.
Hignett.
Playing against Chelsea and to score the first goal there is something that still lives with me now, and it's what most people will talk to me about.
Hignett with the ball. Ron Iggy, you beauty! You Scouser Teesside beauty!
Worshipped every weekend. It's the three legends. Banter and rivalry across the North East. On the Toon, the Cat, the Red.
Good evening. It is the three legends, Lee Clark, Darren Williams and Craig Hignett. Good evening, gentlemen.
Evening, Daz.
Hi,
Evening, lads.
How are you?
Evening up.
Lads.
Evening up.
And how are we doing this week? I mean, it's been a busy week in the Championship this week. A couple of things happening off the pitch for Newcastle as well. But I suppose we've got to start by looking back at those Championship results this week and find out which one of you is more down in the dumps.
Don't ask me, Daz.
All right, okay.
Don't ask me.
All right, okay, Craig.
It is all doom and gloom in this household at the minute.
Well, we'll start with Darren then. Darren, Sunderland's defeat at the midweek against Huddersfield, that must have come as a bit of a shock, did it?
It did, mate. Yeah, I mean, it came as a bit of a shock after, obviously, I would say a second half performance against Plymouth, because I think first half they were poor. But second half to come back and win the game and win it comfortably 3-1. And then I said going into the game prior that it would be a tough one against Huddersfield. It always is. It's one of those places that even as a player, myself, I didn't relish going to. And lo and behold, the inevitable happened, and we get beat 1-0. But for me, I just think there was too many players having off days. The way we set up was wrong. We tried to crowd the centre of the park in midfield to try and outnumber Huddersfield because they do a man-to-man marking job in there. And throw that extra player in to try and create something. But for me, if you look throughout the season, we've been dangerous in wide areas. But unfortunately, against Huddersfield, we just didn't get those wide areas going. It seemed to be very lacklustre. Players seem to kind of go through the motions, and I think I said this to Higgy the other week when we against Middlesbrough. We just seemed second half we just sat off their midfield. We didn't get it, up against them. We didn't try to compete, and it looked that way again against Huddersfield. It's just my way, obviously, with a defeat after such a good win at home against Plymouth.
Yeah, and I mean, Jack Clark has provided a lot of that width and a lot of that creativity. He just wasn't with it the other night. He didn't seem to be on the ball, did he?
He didn't, mate. No, he seemed slightly off, and it's not just him. We're not just pointing the finger at Jack Clark, because there's I thought Job was off. We didn't really get things going. We then got we've got a sucker punch, obviously, with Roberts being out again now. He's pulled tweaked his other hamstring, and obviously be going in for a scan. So that's probably in for for a good few weeks now, missing again. But yeah, I just think like I said, from the joys we've had in wide areas, and it's, let's be honest, it's majority of games where that's where we create from. But unfortunately, it just didn't happen, and I think the manager's took a little bit on the chin. He's saying, obviously, like I say, you overcrowded the midfield area, and wants to try and get an extra player in there. But there's one thing overcrowding it. There's another thing, obviously. Playing it in a different way. You can have that extra man in there, but you've got to be able to find space and and break lines. But we just didn't seem to do that on the evening.
Daz,
I watched the
can
game,
I just ask you?
Sorry, Higgy.
Michael Beale had come out and said last week. I think he said we're not going to blow teams away, and he got a little bit of stick over it. Yeah. Obviously, they'd done Southampton 5 and they scored 3 against Plymouth, but he's come out and said that. Is that just him being sensible, do you think? Because we know, listen, Middlesbrough are in the same boat. We haven't got a goal scorer. They're not going to score bucket loads of goals. You haven't got someone who's going to score 20 a season. Is he just being a realist there? But he's coming for a bit of stick about it, hasn't he? Or is that something as a manager
I think
you think but don't say?
Well, it's probably something you think but don't say, mate, because like you say, you open yourself up to criticism, don't you? Do you know what I mean? But I think he's been a realist as well. We know we aren't scoring goals. We haven't got that flowing. Getting two or three a week, or I mean, it's not every week you're going to do it, but majority of weeks when you're in that, you've got your out and out strikers, you've got your guys that can hit the back of the net. That's the amount of opportunities we create. If we had an out and out striker who got 20 a season, chances are we would blow teams away, but we're just not in that position at this moment in time. So yeah, in a sense he's been a realist, but he's kind of opened himself up again to a bit more criticism.
I watched the game, Daz, as you know. We had a bit crack on the group WhatsApp, and I thought they were really poor on the night. Because I'd obviously heard the reports on the Plymouth win. First half wasn't good, but second half was really good.
Yeah.
But you've just said there, I thought everything was nullified. It was difficult to get the likes of Jack Clark into the game. There wasn't a lot of good possession being built up by Sunderland. There wasn't any really patterns of play that I seen where there was 4 or 5 good passes put together, get the ball out wide and create chances. And I think that's we're going to keep going back onto this being a really young team and a young group. You're going to get these inconsistencies with young players. You're going to get 1 week they're very good, the next game they're not so good. There's not that like 7 out of 10 every week. It's either a 9 or it's a 5. And I think that's what you leave yourself open to when you've got a group of young players and you haven't got the experience head. I watched that game on Wednesday night against Huddersfield, and I'm thinking, couple of experienced players in there, just get them to calm down, get a grip of the game, try and get, like you say, the match winners back into the game. But because they're all young and they're all finding their way themselves, there's not many of them can lead and have that experience. And I think that's what you're going to get. It's going to be like a roller coaster. It's going to be up and down with the results. And it's going to be very difficult, like we talked about last week, for the two teams to get the consistency to put a run together to 100% nail on that top 6 place. Now, Sunderland can still do it. They're only 1 point out. There's still a great chance with the games left. But because they haven't had a really consistent run over the course of the season, it's going to be nip and tuck, isn't it?
Yeah, you can't see any of them doing a Southampton, can you? Can you, Daz? Where they've gone 25 games, I think it is stupid it was, unbeaten, and they've shot themselves right up to third in the table now. But you can't see Borough or Sunderland doing that, can you?
No.
And it always goes back to a goal scorer, doesn't it? It's goals.
Of course it does, mate. And it's it's an inconsistency of getting it, scoring goals. Like you say, we have hit teams. We hit 3 the other week. We hit 5 against Southampton. So we are capable of it, but we haven't got the consistency of it. And this is a thing. And like I said, it's going to be up and down. We're going to win a game, draw a game, and then blow a team away, and then obviously get beat, and it's that like you say, you need that consistency, especially this stage of the season now, to get yourself and cement yourself in these playoffs.
Interesting game coming up at the weekend, Daz.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one, isn't it, against Birmingham? Obviously, it's nice to see Mogger back. Obviously, hopefully he's on the losing end of things, mate. But it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how the crowd. I'm sure the crowd will give him a massive warm welcome. But I'm on the edge of they'll give him a nice warm welcome. How they're going to react to Beale if the game doesn't start particularly well? Is it going to be, is that going to put a bit more well, it will put a bit more pressure on him, but I'm just thinking, I'm trying to think of it from Beale's point of view. You've got a manager in the other dugout who the fans obviously loved, and never didn't want to go, and then at this moment in time you've got a manager in the home dugout who, let's be honest, a lot of fans don't want to see there. So it's a funny position to be in, and a bit of an awkward position in a sense, but for me, it's
like you say, it as if
it's a winner.
If the game doesn't start particularly well for Sunderland, it'll be interesting to see how the fans react. With Mogger being in the opposing dugout and being very popular.
Of Of course it will, mate. Exactly. Yeah, and this is the thing, mate. And obviously it's a winnable game. Especially being at home. It's a winnable game against Birmingham because they're not great. Obviously, he's had a few wins under his belt since he's been there, Mogger. But they're a bit stop-start at the moment as well. But it'd be interesting to see, mate. Interesting to see where the reaction from the fans. I think we've got 2,000 and odd going down, I think. So it will be an interesting development as the game goes on, mate. But for me,
as you touched on earlier, you've lost Patrick Roberts, one of your big players again. That could be a crucial one for you, couldn't it? Really, it's a
massive one, mate. I feel for him in a sense. It's his other hamstring. Obviously, we're hoping it's not too bad. Hoping it's not going to be a prolonged one. But he's obviously going in for a scan and waiting on the results from that. But yeah, it's another body blow, mate. He just gives us that something different, something extra on the other flank. So we could see a few players maybe stepping in, and obviously maybe he's making the debuts, mate. I'm interested to see that Mundell get on a little bit more, see what he's about. There was a lot of praise coming from his former obviously fans. So I'm looking forward to having a look at him eventually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I suppose, Hickey, we've got to come to you and ask you.
You don't have to.
It was only a few weeks ago.
Honestly,
it was only a few weeks ago that Sunderland were in turmoil. They just sacked Mogger. They had the whole Derby thing.
Well, to be fair, Daz, they brought that on themselves, didn't they?
Yeah, that is true. There just feels like there's a real slump, a real low around the club. The PR disaster about the season tickets that came out as well. They're not signing the striker that they desperately needed, letting players go out, and then that performance, Preston, where they couldn't have done any more than score. But what was clear that was lacking was that firepower.
Well, it's obvious to everyone now, isn't it, Daz? They played all right. To be fair, they controlled the game. They played in between the two boxes. I think they played well. Deserve something out of the game, definitely. But it just highlights the fact that they haven't got anyone to put the ball in the net, and they can't keep it out their own net. And that's not a very good combination, because you're not gonna win many games if you're conceding goals and not scoring goals. So I think it's the last 5 games they've scored like a goal a game. They've only scored 5 goals in the last 5 games. It isn't good enough, is it? They need someone who can put the ball in the back of the net regular. And make more of the situations that they get into. I think they miss Isaiah Jones. He's got a little bit of spark and a little bit of pace, and he can be a handful on his day. But it goes back to what Daz is saying about consistency. And whilst the performances have been all right, they've had a few bad ones, but they've been all right on the whole. They just haven't been consistent enough in putting chances away and scoring enough goals. And it's that coupled with what you've just said about Morgan Rogers didn't bring anyone in. And by the way, I agree with them not bringing anyone in. If the right person isn't available, I wouldn't want to spend my money this year, because for one, I think they're going to struggle to get in the playoffs. Even if they bring someone in and they do get in the playoffs, I don't think they'll go up. But if they do go up, imagine that team in the Premier League. You're going to have to spend a fortune just to try and keep your head above water. I don't think they're quite ready. But I think next year is a massive season for everyone. I think for Michael Carrick, it's massive. For the people behind the scenes, bringing players in. They need to bring players in, and they need to have a right go next year, because you don't want to be a club who's treading water. You want to be on the up and getting into playoffs or getting promoted. But the league, it'll be the same again. I think the 3 teams who get promoted will probably be the 3 teams who come back down from the Premier League. 3 teams will go up who've been good. Leicester have been by far and away the best side in the league, but you've got Southampton who are strong now. Leeds are strong. We'd said how well Ipswich have done, but they're fallen off a little bit. West Brom look like they're they're away and they're going to get in the playoffs. So there's only Coventry really that everyone's aiming for. So I don't see the point in spending money on a player who you maybe don't want, or he's not the right one, he's not one of your targets, just to bring him in for bringing him in's sake. I get that strategy, but for me, the season is about rolling the sleeves up, getting themselves to the end of the season, trying to get a few results on the board. But it's going to be hit and miss from now till the end of the season, because that's the team that they are. They're a very hit and miss side. They're not very consistent. And when you've got like I said before, a cocktail of not being able to score goals and letting goals in, it's always going to be up and down. And I just think that's where Borough are at the moment.
Well, you can get in touch with the three legends. You can speak to them. You can come on and give us a call on 0330 or 043 2002. Or you can drop us a WhatsApp on the same number, 0330 or 043 2002. Dan in the Borough has dropped a message on the WhatsApp, Higgy, and it's along those lines. He's saying there's a lot of talk about preparing for next season, which we've just talked about, not making that big spend, etc. But what Dan's worried about is, will we lose more players in the summer if our season ends up being a damp squid?
Well, what players are you bothered about losing? So that's my argument. My argument would be, I don't think any of them this season have been good enough for you to want to keep them that badly. If someone comes in, I'm sure you'll be able to cope with it. And knowing the way the club will be, they'll have targets, and who you're on about keeping. If you're talking about Hayden Hackney, he's going through a bad time at the moment, Hayden, and he has done since the first Chelsea game. He's found it a real struggle, but he's obviously a talented young lad and a good player, and people will still be interested in him in the summer. But is he ready for the step up? I'm not so sure. I think maybe he needs another season or to try and find his form again. But apart from him, who's going to go for?
Well, Dan's just messaged back and he said Riley McGree.
Riley McGree is. I agree. I think Riley McGree would probably listen. He had a weird start to the season where he wasn't getting a game, and people couldn't understand why he wasn't playing. But when he plays, he's always the one for me who looks like the spark. Looks like something will happen if he gets on the ball. I think he would be a blow. I think if he goes, that would be a miss. I don't know whether the club would feel it's a miss or not, because of, like I said, at the start of the season he wasn't even getting in. But I certainly think he's the one we've got who, along with Fours, because Fours I think is the best finisher at the club, but I think Riley McGree is the best footballer at the club. There you go. That's what I think. I think if he were to go, they would be in a bit of trouble.
More trouble.
I think regardless of how anyone's season's gone, I think there's always going to be comings and goings, isn't there, in the summer anyway? Do you know what I mean? That's just part and parcel of football. That happens. For me, there'll be players going out with Sunderland who, at the end of the day, but you're bringing players back in. Do you know what I mean? So it's going to happen.
It's the one player, Daz. It's the one player who you thought, if your club lost, you'd be thinking, oh no. Is the one player? I think you'd be able to cope with anything.
Yeah, I think you can cope. I mean, obviously there's big talk about Jack Clark. There always has been, and there probably always will be. Going into the summer. But for me, he has changed. He's scored goals. He's probably been one of our better players. Let's be honest. But at the end of the day, it's like, if he does go, then you're just looking to bring somebody in and to replace him. So for me, I don't think there's ever a time that you'd overly worry about a player going. Because if you go about your business in the right manner and bring in the right players, then it's there's no issue for me if players want to move on.
And I get the bit about spending money wisely. So if you're trying to build a squad, the last thing you want to do is start building and then 2 or 3 of them go because you're taking too long to be competitive, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I think once you've decided to do it, Middlesbrough had a tough one last summer because they lost the most important players. 4 of them, 3 were on loan, 1 that got sold to Ajax. It was always going to be difficult to replace the amount of goals that they lost or the type of player that they lost. they've tried to do it, but they've decided to go a different way, where they're going to develop their own players. They're going to buy their own players, develop them. It's happened with Morgan Rogers. I don't think anyone would begrudge him a move to the Premier League, especially to a club he's gone to in Aston Villa. Borough have made a really healthy profit on him. But if you're going to do it that way, you have to be competitive, and you have to be competitive fairly quickly to make anyone else want to go to you. And you're the ambitious team in that league, if that makes sense. That you want to be seen as, well, they're having a right go this year, and I want to go there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's what you've got to sell it as. But you can't take too long in building it.
Of course you
can't take 3 or 4 seasons to do it. You've got to do it in 2 transfer windows, 3 at the very most.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's if your manager stays, because there's talk of Carrick now going, isn't there? And he's talking to a Premier League side. Listen, I'm not sure he's done enough to earn a Premier League job, if I'm honest. I think he's done really well.
No.
But I don't think he's done enough to earn a move into the Premier League.
Yeah, to warrant. Yeah, definitely.
He can obviously get a team to play good football, but he needs to, they need to do something. Maybe next year, if they have a team and he gets them in the playoffs and gets them competing, then maybe then. But I think, going on this season, I'm not sure he's done enough.
Well, another message on the WhatsApp regarding Michael Carrick. It's Nathan in the Borough. He said the season's over now. So how can Michael Carrick pick up his players and not let that affect them?
Well, that's his job, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what he's got to do. Him and his staff. I don't think he'll be telling the players the season's over. What are they, 7 points off a playoff spot? They've got a game in hand. They'll still have eyes on that, but they know they've got to do better. And to do better, they need to score more goals. So he can't. As a manager, you're always trying to get the best out of your players, and there's always something to play for, whether it's a new contract, whether it's to stay at the football club. Because listen, if you don't, you've got your own personal pride as well, by the way, and if you don't, you run the risk of being shoved out the door at the end of the season. And like I said before, some of these players, Middlesbrough might be the biggest club they play for, and they won't want to leave it. So they need to pull the finger out and do it.
That's a big factor, Higgy. I back you 100% with that. When you said it there, when you were talking, lads, your words were who would you want to keep at the Borough? You've mentioned 2 players you probably would, and the rest you wouldn't be bothered either way. So they've got to fight for their own futures as well. Whether they think the season's over, but it's not, as you said, 7 points behind, game in hand. Yes, we're seeing it's going to be difficult, because the one thing they haven't done yet this season is put a consistent run of wins together, but they've still got a lot. They've got 15 games still to play, and those players, as you rightly said, mightn't get that opportunity to play for a club as big as Borough, the size of the crowds, the infrastructure, the facilities. So they've got to take it on their responsibility. They've got to do the best they can to at least get an opportunity to be part if the club's going to be successful or not. They kind of just think, the season's petering out, I'll just there's nothing to play for, because like you said, obviously by their performances at this moment in time, they haven't done enough, and that's the key.
You know what it's like, Clark, as a manager. You're coming to the end of the season. You haven't had a particularly great season. You're not where you want to be. You're thinking to yourself, aren't you? I need to change this.
Yeah,
and do
absolutely.
I change it massively, or do I just fiddle about and get 3 or 4 out and get 3 or 4 in? So the whole thing. There's never, for me. I mean, looking at it from a manager's point of view, for me, there's never not something to play for for anyone.
Yeah.
And you have to make them aware of that. They could be bobbling about happy and not thinking, I'm on a 3-year contract. Listen, that contract means nothing, because I can let you go tomorrow. The same as if someone comes in with a big offer, they're not gonna stand in the way. If they can earn from it, and it gives them more revenue to go out and spend and buy more players, then they'll do that as well. So I don't get the players putting their feet up, putting the flip-flops on the holidays. I think if that happens, you've obviously got a player who's got the wrong mentality, and you don't want him anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
We've had another message on the WhatsApp. You can WhatsApp us at any point, 0330 or 43 2002 to get your message across to the legends. You can also give them a call on that number, 0330 or 43 2002. Andy in Sunderland says, after the Sunderland Derby PR disaster and now Borough's PR mess over their season tickets, why do professional business people keep getting things wrong? Well, there's a question.
Because that's life, mate. We all get things wrong, don't we? Yeah. We all get things wrong. You know, let's be honest. I mean,
ours wasn't as bad
to
as
some
yours,
extent.
That is very true.
No, exactly, mate. That's what I was trying to paint all the cracks.
That's the Geordies loved yours. Don't worry about that. Free paints in a spruced up new room, don't they? There's loads of Geordies over. I loved it.
We were thinking about leaving it like that as well.
Listen, I just think, no matter what you do as a football club, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but no matter what you do, we'll get picked apart by people if they want to pick it apart.
Yeah.
So,
of course
there may well be valid reasons why they've done what they've done. It'd help if they spoke to the fans probably about it and not just done it. But listen, no matter what you do as a football club, you're always going to get pelters, aren't you? People are always going to find something wrong with it. The timing's wrong, or this is wrong, or that's wrong. So that's just part and parcel of it. But some of them are, far worse than others. And you do wonder sometimes how people have decided that things are a good idea. I couldn't get it. The early season one. I don't think I'd have put it out after a run of form like we've had.
Well, I think Gibbo and Bowser had met with some of the fan groups last week. We had Kieran Scott on here. The head of media was on, Ian Shaw, last week, and not a word about that, of any of that, to the fan groups. And then the Monday rolls around. Well, I don't know. Didn't he say to the fan groups? Didn't he have a meeting about the fan groups about the prices, and they told them the prices? Maybe not. Was it the supporters that they had a meeting with? Yes, the supporter groups
told them that there was going to be a hike in it.
Yeah, and I think that was only one of the issues, wasn't it? I think the early bird thing was the other. I just think the whole negativity around the club, I don't think helped either.
No, well, that's what I mean. It's at the moment there's not a great feeling about, is there? So you're always going to find fault with whatever they do. I mean, if you look at the season tickets, they are up there. Do you know what I mean? With some of the most expensive in the season, but they've got big costs, and if you want a competitive squad, you try and squeeze everything out of everything, don't you? I mean, it's not like Germany, is it? I was reading this week, Uli Hoeneß at Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich season tickets are £104. £104. And he said, look, we could put them up to £300 and we get 2 million more in revenue. But what's £2 million to us? It's nothing. And that's why they won't do it. But it's amazing. I mean, I went to the opening of that stadium. It was incredible, the Munich stadium, and you couldn't pay for anything with money. Everything was card. Your season card was also your cards to buy hot dogs and drinks and what have you. It was just incredible, the whole stadium, and the way they do it in Bayern Munich. But listen, you can, because they're earning fortunes as well. I think they've won the Bundesliga the last 11 times, haven't they? And they've been in Champions Leagues, won Champions Leagues and finals, and so they're obviously a wealthy club. And it'd be nice to be in a position where you could give something back to the fans. Not many clubs can.
This is the Three Legends on the Cat, the Toon and the Red. You can get in touch on 0330 or 43 2002. That's our WhatsApp number. You can also give us a call on that number as well. I wanted to ask Lee about this week. A lot of the stuff that's been in the news regarding Newcastle has been around Dan Ashworth and the speculation about him moving on to Manchester United. Reports today saying that he would get 450 million in a transfer war chest. Eddie Howe.
Is that just wages, Dad?
Eddie Howe has come out today and said how unusual this whole situation is, because normally the speculation is about players. and he's talked about how in that role you want longevity in the role to see fruits of your labour. It's a long-term position, and he's only been there a short amount of time. Do you think this is unsettling for the club, Lee?
I do, Daz. I think it's a major position to be in the new organisation of the club, and Dan's got he's got a great reputation in the game. But I mean, what Eddie also said as well is Dan's privy to some important information on what Newcastle's strategy is going forward in terms of recruitment. And if he's involved in those high level meetings about which players they're targeting, what's the finances like, and then he's on the verge of moving to another club, I mean, it could eventually be one of Newcastle's rivals once they get this FFP situation sorted out. You know, that could be an issue as well, and I think that's why Eddie said today he would like it sorted out one way or the other very, very quickly. As you said, you know, it looks like Jim Radcliffe's going to go in there and shake up things from the football point of view of the business. It's a club that's been on decline in terms of a lot of things. It still has its prestige as being one of the biggest clubs, but you know, the playing side and obviously Old Trafford's starting to become a bit tired, and the training ground's a little bit dated in comparison to the other superpowers in European football. But I think he's looking to do that, and obviously one of the areas where has been a big problem for them. I think they spent £1 billion, haven't they, over the last few years, which is unbelievable on their squad, and not got a lot to show for it. One Carabao Cup, I think. So for Newcastle, yeah, it's going to. And I totally agree with what Eddie said about the longevity of this position. If you're a sporting director of football, whichever you want to call it, you're there for the long term, because you're not just looking at the first team. You're putting processes into place for the academy, for the medical, for the sports science. You're looking at the recruitment for 3 or 4 windows time, not just the one coming up. And usually you don't see that bear fruit until, you know, 2, 3, 4, even 5 years down the line. You see what's coming through from the academy, etc. So for him only to be here 2 years means that probably not going to see the work that he's done, if it was going to be successful or not. And as Eddie rightly said as well, I mean, you think before Dan arrived, you know, like Bruno Guimaraes and other players were signed before he came in. So a lot of the successful signings and the story of the signings were actually done before Dan came into the club. And that's not, you know, putting things against Dan, because I rate him very highly in the work that he does. But yeah, it's been a strange one. For someone, I would think it's something different for Eddie to deal with as a manager, because as he rightly said, it's usually having to speak about speculation about your players, not about you know, a director of football. But it looks, all intents and purposes, that he's going to end up at Man United.
Clarky, what do you think about Newcastle saying, obviously they'll get a lot of money for Dan Ashworth going? There's talk about £6 million, but there's also talk of Newcastle saying they're going to make him work a year. Yeah. Before he can go.
Well, he had to work, before he came to us, he had to work a period of notice at Brighton. I think it was about 4 months. I don't think that's going to suit anybody, to be honest, making him work. I've seen a couple of media outlets put it out there that he might have to work 12 months notice. I don't see how that benefits anybody, to be honest. You know, he knows he's going. The club know they're going. Like we said, are they going to allow him to be privy into very important strategic transfer meetings? Are they going to allow him into the board meetings where they talk about the finances of the club? So what's the point of keeping him around? You know, he knows he's going to a rival in the Premier League himself. You know, so it would be a strange one if they agree a big compensation package and they make him work a notice period. I don't see how anyone benefits from that, to be honest with you, Iggy.
What do you think he's brought to Newcastle, Clarky, for him like to be so in demand? He's obviously really good at his job, isn't he? But what is it about
I don't think you'll see it, because I don't think he's been here long enough, and I think it takes a long time. I think what he's done is he's put the organisational skills that he has in terms of bringing a sports science team together. We talk about the medical team, and I'm going to give you some stats very, very soon where, that's obviously under question at the moment with the injury history the club's had this season. But obviously there's still a lot of work to be done down in the academy. Lewis Miley's been a terrific positive for that, but the club needs more than just one every couple of years or every 4 or 5 years. So that still needs to work. But as Eddie said, I think with him only being here 2 years, we mightn't see any of the work that he's put in go into practice, because I know they'll replace him because they want that sport and director type person at the football club, but he might come in with new ideas.
It would be, so on the pitch, he's obviously tasked with bringing the players in, or is he tasked with just getting the deals done? Is someone else?
Yeah, I would say more. I would say they've got a massive recruitment team now. That department has changed for the better. I know that. I've got a family member who works in the recruitment team there, and his role in the work that he does is now being used in a much better way. They have scouts at all levels of the game, many all over the world, in Europe, nationally, locally. Again, they've got their relationships back with the boys' clubs of the region as well. With that, it broke down a little bit for the local lads. So I think the recruitment from all levels of the club to the youngest players all the way through to the first team, that's been bulked up. They've gone with lots of different data analysis on that. They look in everywhere. They want to try and bring young players through, whether they bring them in and buy them from other clubs or try to develop their own. So I think that's one area. But I think what his main role has been to bring those people together, and then obviously he's then the man to negotiate the deals from the football point of view and what the best deals are for the club and the player, and to strike the deals there. So he's probably took over the old chief executive's role or the owner's roles when we were playing. When they used to negotiate the deal with you or your agent or whatever, he's probably doing a lot of work on that side, Iggy.
Yeah. So of all the players he's brought in, because he's brought quite a few players in. I've read the list today. Gordon, Livramento and Barnes would be the three, although Barnes has been a bit hit and miss, hasn't he? When he's played, he's been all right, but he's been out quite a bit with injury. And then there was some other names here who I didn't know, like Harrison Ashby, obviously Loris Karius, Matt Target come in, Garang Kool.
Yeah,
no one's ever seen him, I don't think.
Cool's on loan, mate. He's had a couple of. He's only 18. He came from Australia. He was a young player who got the breakthrough as a real young in Australia in the A-League. I think he's in Belgium or Holland at the minute on loan. There's another youngster on loan. Ashby's on loan at Swansea. He came in as a right back. Livramento, good signing, going to be a top player. Really like him. Barnes
Lewis Hall was another one for 38 million.
Lewis Hall, he's a loan with it. Now this is a strange one. It's a loan, but if they hit a certain number of games, this is how I understand it. They have to pay the 38 million. I think the fee was. Now he had. When we've had these injury issues as well, he's hardly ever played. Eddie's put him on and subbed him off at half time or brought him on late in games. And what I've tried to do to back up to say, well, listen, he's only still 18, 19, but when you're looking to spend 38 million quid, you cannot have someone that you're not sure about,
Yeah.
So you've
and
got
then the big one. The big one for me is Tonali. So and that big one, it's got more question marks about that one. I don't think anyone doubts his ability. I think he's a really good player. But obviously, with what went on in the background, that was ongoing even when Newcastle signed him. So how have Newcastle not picked that up?
Exactly. That's where the due diligence.
I don't think that would happen to a Man City, because I know that the depths that Man City go into to sign players, and it's ridiculous. So I think that one's a big question mark for me. What kind of background checks do the people do?
Because this investigation would have been going on well before Newcastle done the deal to sign Tonali. So there has to be. I mean, you have to say it's bad enough losing a player who you spent big money on to a long-term injury. So when you lose him to something that's not football related and he's still fit and healthy, it makes it even worse. So there has to be question marks about the due diligence that's been done on the deal and how they've gone about it. It has to be a big question mark, not just for the finances, but how much the club's, still paying the player full salary. He can't play in a game. He can't even start next season. I think he misses the first 2 weeks of the Premier League season next season. So without a doubt, there has to be questions. So yeah, I think when he spends a lot of time, he done really well at the FA. He was the man who brought this England DNA thing in. He was a big factor with Gareth Southgate and turning things around there. But no, I think the big thing for me, and when I was listening and I watched the interview as well with Eddie, he was very worried about how much of inside knowledge Dan knew about what Newcastle were preparing to do in the coming months and in the summer window, what finances they had to do that, where they could get to, what was their maximum, what's their minimum. And that's important information to have when you're someone who's got that information is going to one of your rivals,
This is the Three Legends on the Cat, the Toon and the Red. You can get in touch at any time on 0330 or 43 2002. We'll take a short break and then we'll be back to look at this weekend's games.
It's the Three Legends. Across the Northeast, Clark, legend. Williams, legend. Hignett, legend. WhatsApp us, call or send a voice message. Banter at its best. 033 00 43 2002.
Right across the Northeast, the Toon, the Cat and the Red.
You can get in touch on 0330 or 43 2002. We'd love to hear from you, and you can speak to the Three Legends. Let's have a look at the games that are coming up this weekend. We'll start with Newcastle. It's the Eddie Howe derby, coming off a big win at Forest last week, at the beginning to climb the way back up the table, but yet again, Clarky, another injury this week. The injuries list this year has been phenomenal, hasn't it?
It's unbelievable, Daz. I mean, like you said, an impressive victory at Forest. Bruno putting on a fantastic show to score the 2 goals, Gamirej. And then at the end of the game, and early this week, being announced that Callum Wilson's injured his pectoral muscle, and he's had an operation this morning. He's going to be out for 12 weeks, which is just crazy. I mean, I've got a list here. 35 games this season, okay, in all comps, and these are the number of the games the players have missed. Joe Willock's missed 32, Harvey Barnes 27, Elliot Anderson 23, Matt Targett 21, Jacob Murphy 19, Sven Botman 18, Callum Wilson 16, Nick Pope 14, Alexander Isaac 9, Dan Burney 8, Lascelles 6, Longstaff 5, Almiron and Trippier, Shaw 2, and Livramento and Dubravka 1. So it's just unbelievable,
It's crazy, isn't it? Well, most of them have missed half a season.
Yeah, well, if he's out for 12 weeks, that's going to take Wilson to the high 20s, potential 30 game mark. You know what I mean?
Jesus.
Crazy, so it just shows you when we're talking about earlier about what Ashworth's rules are, and it's about overseeing all that. I mean, you never want to point the finger at one person, but there has to be certain, question marks being asked about, how the players are being recovered, how they're being prepped, the medical setup. Because if you're thinking about how much that's costing the football club with the number of games those players are missing. It's just absolutely bonkers,
Has it got to the point now, Clarky, where it's got to be a reason? It's not just bad luck.
Well, that's what I would like to think, Higgy. It's bad luck, but it's repetitive, mate. I mean, this is the fourth separate injury Callum Wilson's had this season, and Callum will be the first to tell you he's a great kid. You know, when I've ever had the chance to bump into him around the ground or the city, he's a great lad, and he's done brilliant when he's on the pitch. That's why it makes it more frustrating. But, you know, he's had an injury history throughout his career, but now fourth separate injury, which is a quite a long-term one as well. And it's when I'm rattling off that list, you know, there's about 10 players there, double figures of players who are into like minimum 14 games missed of the season, so more than a quarter of the season, really, nearly a third of the season, of the league season. And if you're a manager and you're having to go through that on a weekly basis, I mean, Eddie didn't confirm or anything about Alexander Isak today, whether he's back tomorrow. So with Callum being out, it could be, if Alexander Isak's out, it's left to Anthony Gordon to play as a striker, but then no backup on the bench. Do you know what I mean? It's like square pegs and round holes type of scenario at the top end of the field. So it's been really difficult, mate, and it has derailed the season. So as a club, I think when they do that debrief come the end of the season, that'll be one area where they'll have to say, you know, where can we be better? Because these players are still getting their full salary, and rightly so. That's part of their contract, and the club are still paying them. But if you think how much it's costing the club and the amount of games that you're going to get out of them, it's absolutely madness, you know. So it is a massive area. I remember my last season as a player, when I went back to Newcastle, we had a horrendous injury list, and what Graham Souness did, he changed our training venue. We swapped with the academy because he felt there was an issue with the pitches at the first team training centre, with too many players slipping and
too hard
groin injuries. Well, he just felt that the pitches the lads were losing their footing too regular and were getting groin injuries or hammies or a calf. So he decided to swap it around, you know, because the academy and first team are just, you know, across the road from each other. So we went down to the academy training facility, and the academy kids came up to the first team. So it was like, I mean, I can't even remember whether it changed the narrative in terms of did the injuries improve or not, to be honest with you. But I think he was at the end of his tether in terms of the injuries, and he was just ready to try anything, you know, something radical like that to see if it would improve. Because you see the amount of staff that these clubs have now, you know, masseurs, sports scientists, fitness coach, strength and conditioning coaches, physios, doctors, you know, and the machinery they have, the equipment they have, and you know, to have an injury list like that is just absolutely ridiculous, you know. And to be fair to them, they've done well to be where they are. They're hanging right in there. I mean, what it's shown in the last couple of games, the 4-4 Luton one, then obviously the Forest game at the weekend, they're not as diligent defensively this season. By a long shot now this year. They've given far more goals away than they did last year, which was a big plus point for them. They were really strong defensively when they qualified for the Champions League. But the good thing is they're still scoring goals. But if we're going to be limited to, you know, Anthony Gordon, who's done a good job there when he's had to do it, but he's the only one that you would say, even though a striker's not his main position, he can play it and he's done it well. You know, what's... Who's going to come in if we need backup? So that could be an issue going forward, especially while our defensive work's not at the levels that we've been used to, you know.
Yeah. Well,
so big game tomorrow. Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, and they've had a little bit of a blip in the last couple of weeks, but they did look impressive after a very slow start, Bournemouth. And they've got Solanke, who's had a tremendous season up front there, the striker, been touted was touted with a move in January, which, you know, didn't happen, but he's looked impressive this year. But I just think with it being a home game, and you know, a little bit, you know, getting that win at Forest gives them that confidence again. I think that Newcastle, it'll be a really tight game, but they can get the 3 points and it can keep pushing them on. As I said, we're in the last European spot at the minute. We're 5 points off a Europa League position, 9 points off the Champions League, which is going to be a real big ask, to be honest with you, with the teams ahead of us as well pushing for that. And you're thinking the teams that are chasing that top 4 aren't going to drop many points over the course of the rest of the season. So yeah, we've still got a lot to play for, still in the FA Cup obviously, so yeah, tight game tomorrow, but I think we can get the 3 points.
We'll get your predictions in a second. I just want to bring Ian Merter in. Ian's on red and white and black and white and red all over straight after this show, straight after the Three Legends. Ian, what have you got set up on the show tonight?
You got there in the end, Darren. Yes. It was quite funny listening to Clarky talk about when Souness swapped the training pitches for the youth team and the first team. And I remember one of his press conferences, a journalist asked him, he said, so obviously you don't like your senior players getting injured on these pitches, but you don't mind if your youth team players do. Graham Souness didn't like that question. Well, the journalist in question was Simon Bird, who will be my guest later on in the second half of my show. My first guest, I don't know if you remember, lads, about 2 or 3 months ago I had Lee Howie on, and he was so good, I thought I've got to get his brother on. So Steve Howie is my first guest today, and I'll be trying very hard to get some Lee Clark stories out of him.
I'm sure there's plenty.
Well,
not for your family show.
All right, thanks,
Beat you to it, Ian.
Right, take care.
We'll speak to you in a little bit.
Yeah, mate.
So we'll do the predictions a little bit. Let's have I know you mentioned it already. Tony Mowbray, Birmingham's. How's that going to go play out tomorrow, do you think, Daz?
Well, like you said, mate, it's going to be an interesting one, isn't it? Let's be honest. I think Sunderland are a bit more relaxed away from home. They don't feel as much pressure. Need to start the game well. Obviously, to keep the fans kind of on side type of thing, because obviously there's a lot of disgruntled fans from the midweek game against Huddersfield. But for me, it's like I said, it's a winnable game. It's one we can go into. And if we play and if we get it in the right areas where we know we're dangerous and we know we can create things, then I'm quite sure we'll come away with a win from there. But like I say, it all depends on us. There's games where we don't start particularly well, and then we second half, like we did against Plymouth, we're a completely different side, and then there's on the other reverse, we've got the game against Huddersfield where we just didn't turn up, and I always say you can have a couple of players who have off days, but when you've got 6 or 7 who are having an off day, then you're potentially going to lose the game. For me, I'll go for it. Are we doing predictions?
Let's go on then. We'll go for the predictions. Go on.
Yeah. Well, I predict. I think it'll be a tight game. I think we'll concede, but I think Sunderland will probably edge it 2-1.
2-1. Lee, what's your prediction for Sunderland versus Birmingham tomorrow?
Well, obviously a lot of interest in the game with so quickly come back up against Mogga, who's very popular there and rightly so, and obviously knowing the club well, St Andrews, how they'll get behind it'll be a good atmosphere with the big number Sunderland will take. I think difficult game for Sunderland. Obviously, as I said, I watched them against Huddersfield. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw.
Okay, 1-1 draw for Clark. Higgy, what do you reckon?
I'm thinking along the same lines as Clarky. I think they had a poor result, Birmingham, against Sheffield Wednesday, where they got beat 2-0 at Sheffield Wednesday, but then they bounced back, didn't he? And Mogga played another former team in Blackburn, where Birmingham beat them 1-0. Mm-hmm. I think this will be a tight game. I don't think there'll be much in it. I think I'm going to agree with Clarky. I'm going to go for a 1-1 as well.
Right, I think it certainly will be interesting, like you said, Daz, about how the crowd are going to react to Tony Mowbray and what impact that will have. Let's move on then quickly, because we're running out of time. Borough versus Leicester versus Borough. Leicester looking for
Be kind, lads. Be kind.
Leicester looking for a fifth successive victory, and yeah, they're 12 points at the top of the table ahead. But Borough looking to do the double over them after Greenwood's amazing strike at home. Higgy, what are you thinking about the game tomorrow?
I think he changed. Wasn't this one of the games where Michael Carrick changed the way they played, didn't he?
Yeah.
He had a man marker, I think, in this one. And it worked a treat, didn't he? And then Greenwood scored a fantastic free kick to get the point. Listen, I think it's difficult going to Leicester. I really do. I think they score goals, and Borough can't stop conceding goals. I think it's a real difficult one to get anything out of it. If they're going to get anything out of it, they're going to have to score more than one. I just think it's a tough one. I'd take anything down there, whether that's a draw or what, I'd take it. But I think it's going to be a difficult one. I'm going to be optimistic, and I'm going to say, is 2-2 being optimistic? I don't know whether it is or not.
Yeah,
Desmond,
I think it is. Yeah,
probably.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to say 2-2. I'll take that. 3-0 was in my head, but I said 2-2.
There was some stat I think I'd read this morning about in the last few games Borough have had 50 some shots at goal, and only 6 or 7 of them on target. Which we know what the issue is, and hoping that that changes tomorrow, because it often happens, doesn't it? A team will come to the Riverside with a bogey record. They've not won, or in so many games, or we fully expect it to go one way, and then something happens and Borough turn it the other way. So you never know. Lee, what do you reckon for Borough tomorrow?
Really difficult. Honestly, I would love to see that they can get a positive result. Want the North East teams to do well, but I just cannot see it. They're so good, Leicester, so far. Middlesbrough struggling, to stop goals going in. I think they'll do well if it's 2-0 to Leicester.
Okay, and Daz.
Yeah, I was going to go. I was going to give Middlesbrough an extra goal, but Iggy said we're going to draw, so I'm going to take it away now.
Well, to be fair, we went for a clean sweep last week, didn't we? And Borough were the only ones who let us down.
Mate. We did, mate. You're right. I think it's going to be a draw. I'll be honest with you. I think it's going to be a 1-1 draw. I do.
Very good. And
I have a funny feeling.
I'll definitely take that.
Yeah, and I would as well. And Daz, while you're on it, Newcastle Bournemouth.
Yeah, I fancy Newcastle, to be quite honest. I really do. Going into it, I think it'll be a tough game. Don't get me wrong. I think there'll be goals from both sides, but I'm going to go 2-1 Newcastle.
2-1 Newcastle. Higgy?
I'm going 3-1 Newcastle.
Okay.
I think Bournemouth have hit a brick wall, and I think Newcastle have turned the corner a little bit, so I think 3-1.
And Lee, what do you reckon?
I'm going same as Daz, 2-1. We're struggling to keep clean sheets at the minute, but I think we'll have enough at home to get a big 3 points. 2-1 Newcastle.
Right, well, fingers crossed. Let's hope for some positive results for the big 3 teams this weekend. Where are you going to be watching the matches then this weekend, guys?
Probably at home.
Yeah, I'm going to be at home watching it.
Yeah.
I'm going to be in a ski resort in Europe where there's no snow.
You'll still be skiing.
Have a wonderful weekend, gents. This is the 3 Legends.
Have a good weekend, fellas.
Cheers, guys.
See you later.
See you, mate. Take care.